Assalamu alaikum students, welcome to lab 5 of fundamentals of programming course. In this lab we will be talking mainly about three things. Firstly, we will be revising some of the loops that we studied in previous lab. Secondly, we will be talking about nested loops, mainly nested for loop, and thirdly we will be talking about break and continuous statements. Let's get to the first thing. Firstly, we will be revising some of the loops that we studied that include for loop, while loop, and do while loop. So let's see the for loop first. As we know, in for loop there are fundamentally four steps. As soon as the compiler encounters the keyword for, it then looks for the initialization variable, then evaluates the expression that is written after the first semicolon. If that expression results in a true or a false, the body of the loop gets executed or skipped respectively. For example, for the first time the count is initialized to 0, so 0 will be less than 4. That will give a true result, and when the true result comes, the body of the for loop gets executed. So third step will be the execution of the body of for loop. In the body of for loop, what we are doing is whatever value the count variable holds, we are just printing it on the screen. Currently it holds the value 0, so 0 will get written on the screen. Then we are jumping to the next line, and then we encounter the closing bracket of for loop. As soon as the closing bracket is encountered, as it is a loop, so it goes back to the increment condition, or whatever is written here. It may be increment, it can be decrement. And after incrementing or decrementing whatever is written here, it then goes to the evaluation of expression again. And now the count value has been incremented by 1, and it has become 1. So it will check 1 is less than 4. This will again be a true statement. Counts value that is currently 1, it will get printed on the console. And we will jump on to the next line, and we will encounter the closing bracket of loop. We will go back again to the increment or decrement, whatever is written here after the second semicolon, and then the expression will be evaluated again. Now the count will hold the value 2, and as 2 is also less than 4, this expression will become true, and the body of for loops gets executed again. On screen there is written 2. We'll again go back, increment, counts value will become 3. 3 is also less than 4, 3 will get printed. We'll jump on to the next line and go back. Now the value of count will become 4 when another increment happens, and 4 less than 4 is a false statement. So the result that will be returned from here will be a false or a 0, and when the expression is evaluated to be false, the anything written inside the brackets of this for loop whose expression was evaluated gets skipped, and whatever code is written after the for loop gets executed. That's how for loop works. We just saw how the for loop works. Now we will be look on how the while loop works. In for loop, all three things, the initialization or the definition, the evaluation of expression, and the increment or decrement happens in the same line after the keyword of for. In while loop, these three things happen at three different places. The initialization might happen at the start of the main program. The evaluation of expression happens just after the keyword while is encountered, and just before the ending of the while loop we can increment or decrement the variable that was being evaluated, so that it does not become a infinite loop. So we'll run line by line and see how the while loop works. In the start, count variable is initialized to 0, and when the variable has the value less than 4, it gets printed on the screen. That is basically happening in this code. Firstly, count will 0 will be less than 4. This will return a true value, and when while has the true value in the brackets of the expression evaluation, the anything written inside the while brackets gets executed. So count will be holding value 0, and it will be printed on the screen. Next, we will jump to next line, and just before the encountering the closing bracket of while loop, the count will be incremented by 1. So now the count value has become 1, and as while is a loop, so it goes back to the evaluation of expression. 1 is also less than 4, it is also a true condition, so this thing will happen again, and it will go back to the evaluation of expression, and now the count will hold the value 2. 2 is also less than 4, 2 will get printed. Similarly again, it will go back, count will have the value 3, 3 will get printed, and now when count plus plus will happen, count will have the value 4, and when it encounters the closing bracket, it goes back. 4 is less than 4 is a false statement. So whenever a false statement is executed, anything written inside the while brackets does not get executed and it gets skipped. So we will come out of the while loop. That's how the while loop. We just studied how the for and while loops work. Now we'll be looking on how the do while loop works. Do while loop is used in places where for the first time it is mandatory to execute a particular task. For example, to add the two numbers, and then it depends upon the choice of user that he wants to do that thing again or not. For the first time, the do while loop, anything written between the do brackets get executed at a must. For example, anything written here inside the do brackets will executed no matter the condition is true or false, because the condition is evaluated after the compiler has gone through these lines. So for the first time, everything will get executed and then the condition will check. If the condition is true, then again and again the code written in between the do brackets will get executed, otherwise it will come out of the do while loop and everything written here will get executed. It is different from while in a sense that in while the expression gets evaluated before the code between the while brackets is executed. However, here the expression is tested after the code is executed for the first time. So do while is a post test loop, whereas while was a pre-test loop. Till now we have seen how the basic for, while and do while loops work. Now we will be diving deep into the nested loops, especially the nested for loop. So let us look at how the nested for loop works. It's just like the for loop that we studied before. There are two loops, an outer for loop and an inner for loop. We'll start with the outer for loop, of course. Outer for loop, we have the I variable that gets initialized to 0 in the start. Then it is checked for the expression if I is less than 3. I currently contains the value 0, so 0 is less than 3 is a true statement, and when a for has a true statement, it gets its body gets executed. So the compiler will come inside the body of the outer for loop. It will encounter another for loop that we will be referring to as inner for loop in this explanation. In the inner for loop, a variable j is initialized to 0 as well. Now j is evaluated for less than 4, whereas I was evaluated for less than 3. 0 is less than 4 is a true statement, and when the for loop has a true statement, it comes inside the brackets of its for the execution of its body. Here a star gets printed on the screen. One star will get printed on the screen, then it will hit the closing bracket of the inner for loop, and it will go back to the increment or decrement condition of the inner for loop, not the outer for loop. From here on, it will again check the expression. Now the j's value has become 1. I's value is still 0 because there hasn't been any increment in that. 1 is also less than 4. It is again a true statement. Another star will get printed on the screen. Again it will hit the closing bracket of the inner for loop. It will go back to the increment or decrement of the inner for loop. J will become 2 here, and 2 is also less than 4. Another star will get printed. Again it will go back. J will become 3 now. 3 is less than 4 is a true statement. Another star will get printed. It will go back. J becomes 4 now. 4 less than 4 is a false statement. And when a for loop evaluates the expression to return false value, it skips the bracket it skips its brackets. It has skipped these brackets and it will come outside to execute the code that was written after the brackets of inner for loop. Here we have a next line statement, so we'll go here on the console. Then it will encounter the closing bracket of the outer for loop. These two brackets are for the outer for loop, these two brackets are for the inner for loop. And as soon as it hits the closing bracket of outer for loop, it will go back to the increment or decrement condition of the outer for loop. Here I plus plus will happen, so I will become 1. I will become 1. 1 is less than 3 is a true statement. Now it will again come inside the bracket of outer for loop, as these two brackets belong to the outer for loop and these two to the inner for loop. Here it will encounter the same inner for loop again. J will again become 0. J will again become 0. 0 is less than 4 is a true statement. J in third step in the for loop is the execution of body of the loop. If the statement is true, another star will get printed. Remember, we were on the next line in the console because of this statement. So a star will get printed, then we'll encounter the closing bracket of inner for loop. It will go back, J will become 1 again. 1 is less than 4 is a true statement. Another star will get printed, then it will go back, J will become 2. Again 2 is less than 4, another star will get printed, then it will go back, J will become 3. 3 is less than 4 is a true statement, another star gets printed, then it goes back, J becomes 4 now, and 4 is less than 4 is a false statement. Now these brackets of the inner for loop will get skipped and we will go to the whatever is written outside that those brackets, and it is the next line. We will go next line in the console, then we will be encountering the closing bracket of the outer for loop, then it will go back to the increment or decrement of the outer for loop. Here I will become 2 now. 2 is less than 3 is a true statement. Again the same thing with the inner for loop happens, and 4 stars get printed on the screen. And now when the code returns to the I plus plus, i's value becomes 3, and 3 is less than 3 is a false statement. And whenever the false statement comes, the whole brackets of that for loop gets skipped. So anything written inside these two brackets will get skipped, whether it is another for loop, whether it is a while loop, switch loop, or switch statement, or anything else. It will get skipped, and we will be here executing the code that comes right after it. So as you can see here, the outer variable was governing the number of rows we had. For example, it was running from 0 to less than 3, 0, 1 and 2, and the inner for loop was governing the columns. These things are the rows, and these things are rows, and these are columns. So we have 3 rows here, because the outer variable governs the logic of the rows mostly, while the inner variable was going from 0 to less than 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 times it was running, so we had 4 columns. Similarly, if we increase this 4 to 5, we will see an increase in the column in all the lines. And similarly, if we increase this 3 to 4, we will be observing the increase in number of rows, depicting that the logic of rows is governed by the outer for loop, and logic of columns is governed by the inner for loop in most cases. There is one more concept in this lab of the break and continue statement after the nested for loop. Firstly, we will look at how the break statement works. In the third lab, we saw how the break statement works with the switch statement. In any case, when there are cases in the switch statement, and as soon as the break statement was encountered, the compiler used to come out of the brackets of switch statement. In the switch statement is used with the loops in order to break the loops. For example, here we have a while loop, and for a particular condition when the count becomes 5 we need to break this loop so that it does not go ahead. How the break statement works is as soon as it encounters, it comes out of the while loop brackets. It takes the compiler out of the while loop brackets. For example, in the start, count was initialized to 0. The count was being checked for being less than 10. 0 is less than 10 is a true statement. It will come inside the opening bracket of while. It will see an if condition. The count is equal 5. Count's current value is 0. Count is a variable in memory. Its current value is 0. This statement is false. So it will skip these brackets and print count on the screen, which is 0. Next, count will become plus plus. Count will become 1. Count will become 1. And then it will encounter the closing bracket of while loop, and then it will go back to the expression. Count 1 is also less than 10. This is a true statement. It will come inside the while loop. Count is equal 5 is a false statement. So it will skip these brackets, again will print 1 on the console. Count will become 2 now after becoming plus plus, go back again. And this will count will be checked. 2 is less than 10 is a true statement. It will again skip this, print 3, go back, and count plus plus. Count will now become 3. It will 3 is less than 10 true. Count is not equal to 5, skipped. Count 3 will get printed. Count will become 4 now. 4 will get printed. Now when it goes back, count will hold the value 5. 5 is less than 10. That is a true statement. It will come inside. Now the count is equal to 5. This statement also becomes true. So anything written inside the if brackets gets executed. And what is written inside the if brackets is a break statement. And as soon as the break statement is encountered, we come out of the loop in which we were. We were in the while loop. So as soon as the break statement is encountered, we come outside the while loop and execute whatever is written here. So the while loop will not run anymore. It has been broken. Now we will be talking about the continue statements and how it is different from the break statement. A piece of code is written here where the count is initialized to 0 in the same way as it was written in the previous example. 0 is less than 10 is a true statement. Now if count is equal to 5, then the continue statement will occur, and the significance of the count plus plus above it I will also explain it little later. What the break statement used to do was to take the compiler out of the while loop. Here the continue statement does not take the compiler out of the loop. It just skips that particular iteration. For example, if the continue statement is not encountered, the whole thing written inside the while loop will get executed. But as soon as the continue statement is encountered, anything written after the continue statement inside the while loop gets skipped. So that particular iteration is continued. The loop is not broken, but that iteration is skipped. Yes. So we look at how it works. Count is not equal to 5 now, so this will get skipped. Count will get printed on screen 0. Count plus plus, count will have the value 1. 1 less than 10 is a true statement. Again this will be skipped. 1 will get printed, 2 will get printed, 3 will get printed, and 4 will also get printed. Now count plus plus, when count plus plus happens, we will have 5 in the count. 5 is less than 10 is a true statement, but a count is also equal to 5, so it will come inside the brackets of if. Now there is a continue statement here after the increment. So count is incremented to 6 at the back end, and there is a continue statement. Continue statement, what continue statement does, it takes the compiler back to the evaluation of the expression. For example, it will skip anything written after the continue statement inside the while loop. So a compiler goes from here back to here. In break statement, the compiler used to come from here to outside the while loop, while this does not happen in the continue statement. So anything written after this gets ignored for this particular iteration. It goes back, count holds the value 6 now, and 6 is less than 10. This statement will get skipped again. 6 will be printed on the screen. Count plus plus 7 will get printed on the screen. 7, 8, 9, and then count plus plus will become 10. 10 is less than 10 is a false statement in whole of while bracket gets skipped. Anything written. So you see 5 does not get printed on the screen here. The significance of this particular statement here was that if we had not written this, for example, we assume that we had not written this statement, what would have happened? It would have taken the compiler back to the evaluation of expression and not implemented the value of count. Counts variable was currently 5, it would have taken it back to here. 5 is less than 10 is a true statement, but count is still 5. So it will again encounter the continue statement, will go back. So it will become a kind of infinite loop. So this statement was necessary to incorporate here. So that's the difference between break and continue statement. We studied about nested loops, break statement and continue statement, along with the revision of some loops that we studied in lab 4. Lab tasks are given to you on the manual. You can go through it, and any queries you can answer on Microsoft Teams.